welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yi.
I'm Wendy Yi.
I'm Roy Cannaday.
I did that in the wrong order, didn't I?
You absolutely did. Continuing along, 4 years ago, a game called Crusaders Thy Will Be Done came out.
Wow, was it 4 years?
4 years ago.
Oh, I remember.
Tasty Minstrel Games, who is now no longer a company, unfortunately, had planned to put out an expansion and then never did. And then after they went under, Renegade Games picked up some of the properties from TMG. So Crusaders expansion came out. You can actually even see the TMG logo on the expansion box here. This is a game that I enjoy a lot. This is a game that...
Oh, I enjoy it as well.
And this is a game that I've heard good things about, but hadn't played it until playing with the expansion.
Yeah, so you're gonna get 3 different viewpoints. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I think you like it a lot, but I think I enjoy it more.
I don't like, yeah, you like love it. Like you were so sad when this didn't come out. And I was like, cool.
Right,
But now it's here.
You had kind of an oh well, but yeah, so we're going to operate under the assumption you know how to play Crusaders for this review, even though Roy didn't, and we're going to be reviewing the expansion. But first, I'll show you what's new in the expansion box. Here's a bit of a simplified setup for the Crusaders Divine Will expansion. This is the base game board and a basic player board. I don't have it set up all the way because I want to highlight what's different in the expansion. I'm operating under the assumption you know the base game at least a little bit. If not, there's a link below for a review and a rules overview of the basic game. Let's talk about what's different here. The first thing that you'll notice that there are track overlays that you set on top of the tracks over here, which is going to increase the value, the fight value, and the victory point value of fighting the enemies here in the game. So you're going to set these over here. The next difference you'll notice are the buildings. There's a sideboard here which has buildings that you can build out as well using the same build action. You can build these on their own for this top price, which is the larger number, following the same rules as the original game. However, you can also build each one of these buildings with their matching base game building, which is shown to the right. For example, keeps can be built in a space where you have a castle built. Not just one of your own, but any player who has a castle in a space, you can build a keep in that space as well. That's the only way that these buildings can share spaces with other buildings. Chapels can be built on their own or where churches are at for a discount. Windmills where the farms are, and then vaults where the banks are. You can still, as I said, build these on their own. Every time that you build one of these in the space where you have one of your knights, you get a benefit. These allow you to flip over your troops, basically take the garrisoning action. You'll also notice that you have more troops here on the side, the mustering action. So you can have a higher total value of troops with this expansion here. Next up, when you build chapels, you get extra action discs that you get to place onto your board and use for the Mancala thing, which is a nice little addition. Over here, the windmills allow you to remove other buildings. Remove a level 1 building, remove a level 1 or 2 building, remove a level 1, 2, or 3, or up to a 4 building, and then you uncover all those symbols and get the benefits just as in the base game. And lastly, vaults, if you build them, this allows you to upgrade one of your action wedges, flip it over so it's the stronger side of it, and will also grant you points at the end of the game. These have different level 4 things that will give you some benefits as well. So that's the building module. Next up is going to be the influence change. The influence action in the original game was just to get victory points, the influence points. Now, you'll notice that there are these influence tokens set up on every space of the game board. You can use the influence action now, the new and changed one, to take the influence tile of the space that you're in. This one costs 3 action strength, will give you 1 point, and gives you an immediate benefit. In this case, you can distribute all of the tokens off of one of your action wedges and move them around, just like in the normal game or so. That's an example of one of these ones. Other ones will allow you to upgrade one of your action wedges right away. This one here is a +1 build symbol that you can hold on to and spend when you would like to spend it. Some of these here, the level 4 ones, allow you to get an extra action symbol permanently for the rest of the game that you can just use whenever you use that particular action. Now, every time that you complete one of these influence tokens by doing the influence action, you take this, hold on to it possibly for some endgame scoring, and you take one of your shield markers of your color out here. From now on, it's free for you to move one of your knights out of this spot, or it costs 1 fewer in case there's enemies there. So that's the changed influence action. You'll notice that here there are majority scoring tiles, 5 and 2 points, just like when for crusading in the basic game. Points for having the most of these new influence tokens. And lastly, players want to know about the 4 different player powers. The Order of the Dragon here gives you a discount when building the new buildings here. The Bailiwick of Brandenburg allows you to take the influence action not just in the space that you're in, but in adjacent spaces as well. The Brothers of the Sword here allow you to distribute the tokens on your wedges when you build one of the new buildings. And then lastly, the Female Order of the Band gives you one of these big action tokens, which counts as 2. And then when you distribute action tokens, you can place that anywhere that you would like. Just like when distributing wedges in the normal game, that's what comes in the expansion. So let's start really quick with components. One of the first components you might notice is the box.
Yeah.
That was really hard to put the pieces back into.
It is bowed really weird. I think the intention is this is a tuck box because you can fit
Fit
this.
everything
straight
in.
into the regular box.
Yes. There's also a lack of spot UV. In fact, I was trying to figure out what was in the base box versus the expansion, and I couldn't figure it out because there weren't any symbols on the like player powers and stuff. But then I realized, there's no spot UV, and that saved me a bunch of time. But also, I wish that there was like a cute little expansion symbol in a corner somewhere.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's true. I think the spot UV might only be on the deluxe printings of it.
Oh, gotcha.
Well,
Which-
then that is a continued problem.
So here's one of the things, though, is that I tried fitting this into a regular box, right? Because the regular box is like an inch or so shorter than this one. It would be a very tight squeeze.
Gotcha. Even with all the stuff being cardboard and everything, that just still doesn't fit
Yeah.
really.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's tight. I think you could fit it if you have the deluxe box. That's a weird thing, weird move. But otherwise, I think that the general component quality in the expansion is up to par with the original. What do you think about the cardboard buildings rather than the wood buildings? The fact that this has the little flat tokens.
I mean, I think I'm fine with it overall. I mean, it is, of course, it's cardboard versus the other buildings, but the buildings, the fact that they go in a space with another building specifically, normally, it doesn't bother me that much because they are slightly different in the mechanical way that they work, I think. So it kind of helps you differentiate, like, these buildings can be built where other buildings are. So being different doesn't bother me too
Okay,
much.
so they're bonus, so they look different.
Right. So yeah, it makes them slightly differentiated, even though they don't look the exact same on the board. I guess so.
Yeah. And you can build one of those buildings as the only building a spot, or put it as
right.
like an addendum.
Right, as a cheaper version.
Yeah. I'm
Or
building
a
it.
less expensive version.
My castle needs an extra tower. I do like the fact a lot, though, speaking of the buildings, that you can build those where other players have built a
Yes.
building. So you can
Yes.
put a tower. I can put my tower on one of y'all's castles for some reason.
You can just see the web of decisions as more things get built up. It's like, I can move here and do this, or go there and do that, and depending on where people have built stuff, it'll be changed up each game.
It
So
makes
that's kind
for
of
a
interesting.
very colorful board
Oh, for sure.
by the end of it, for sure. One of the things that I like about all the different actions that you add with this is that you can stay put longer. I felt like in the base game, you had to travel all the time, and every time you travel, you feel inefficient, especially if you only have one night out. So I felt like this allowed you to lean a little bit less into traveling, but you still could fully go into traveling if that's what you wanted to do and chase a bunch of different things, a whole bunch of different locations. So I appreciate that it added a little bit more for the people that want to just kind of like, I want to hang out one spot, and I want to build a building, and then I want to build another building, and then I want to, collect the little, what is it called? Improvement, innovation.
The influence token.
Influence, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, the little influence tokens. Like, there's just more to do in each spot, and so I don't know, I like that.
And because you can build one of those new extension buildings on someone else's building, those spots are no longer dead, right? Roy moved into a spot, fought the guy, built the building up. In the basic game,
Right.
there's nothing else to do there.
Right.
You have to move or go do something else, right? So.
Right. So now I can, if Roy left the influence token, I could get that. I could build the extension building on his thing. There's a little bit more that you can do.
It's kind of funny because there was sometimes when I'd move away from a place without it fully being utilized and been like, I kind of wish I was still there because that thing would be kind of cool. So it's just interesting, those different efficiency things that you're trying to figure out as the game goes along.
Yeah.
Now, the base game has the whole Mancala thing. It doesn't really change up too much of that, but it does change up the influence action from the base game, which you haven't played this, Roy. In the base game, it's just if you do the influence action at strength 6,
points.
you just get 6 points. This is more fun, I suppose. I suppose you would call it, because you're getting a whole new token. That token could be a one-time use ability. It could be
it gives you little powers and different things like that. And trying to, because I mean, you will look at the influence tokens on the board and be like, that one's really good. I might run over there and try to get that one because it's going to be worth extra points, or be able to let me upgrade something and different things like that, which could be really important if you get at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's a good. Do you feel like it's a bit visually overwhelming, particularly you having not played the basic game without those tokens on every single spot?
For me, I'm kind of a unique player in games, so I can usually like put things together pretty quickly. I didn't have too much of an issue with it, but I do play a lot of board games. So, I mean, overall, I kind of understood like, oh, this is how this works. Oh, this is how this works. It kind of came together for me pretty quickly. But I could see how it could be overwhelming for somebody who's not as big into games or not used to tons of icons all over the place. So.
That's one of the strong points about Crusaders for me, the reason I like it so much. It feels like a very full, nice, meaty game that plays in about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So this adds to the meat of it, but I think it's still decently teachable because you don't know the difference with or without this expansion. So it's not like, I don't think this is an expansion. And I'm curious your thoughts on it. I don't think that this is an expansion that would be too difficult to teach to your game group if you're like, I really want to play the Crusaders expansion, but 3 of the 4 of us have played it and the one person hasn't. I think that if you are familiar with a good chunk of games, I don't think it would be too difficult to add.
Right.
I don't think it's too difficult to add, but it definitely steps up the complexity rating.
Okay.
You got so much more to look at, because you have that extra whole board of buildings and you have all that extra stuff on the board. So I think it's more to think about and more to balance in the sense of like weight. But if you're playing with a group that already plays relatively heavier games, this is just surprisingly sweet and short. So I think that just adds a little bit more of that complexity, but I don't think it's overwhelming. But I love that, like, Roy, we taught you, and we still played in under an hour.
Yeah.
Like, boom, done, it's fast. And I think that is one of the biggest selling points of Crusaders in general, is that it's genuinely quick, even though you're playing a very full, a very heavy, and a very engine-building game. Like, it doesn't feel like it's cut short. At least that's how I feel.
For me, in general, this is an extremely deterministic game. It has like, combat mechanics, but you're technically just getting points on a track sort of thing. And for me, if I'm going to play that style of games, I want the turns and actions to be really, really quick. So this is just Crusaders in general. I enjoy the fact of how quick this is, and I think even with the expansion, there's just more decisions to make, but it doesn't really bog that down. It's still like, okay, we're doing this and going. We're doing this and going. We're doing this and going. And the most things you could be doing is like 2 things at a time. If you're upgrading something, it's like, okay, I move and then I crusade. So it's extremely quick, and it just gets back to your turn so fast. I really enjoy that about the game as a whole.
Even with 4 new types of buildings with 4 different abilities, 4 different effects when you build them, which I think all of them are great. Muster a troop, take off a different building, upgrade a tile. It's all stuff that's already familiar to the core game, so none of them.
It's nothing new that breaks it mechanically.
But adding a new action token onto your board
is a big deal, especially if you can do it early game. You're gonna use it for the rest of the game, you know.
Especially if you start with one of those player powers that has fewer than the 12 or whatever the basic amount is, 12 or 13.
Right. If you start at that disadvantage because you're asymmetric player power, and then you're like, yoink, yoink.
I caught up.
That feels huge. So I really enjoy it. And it's cool to hear your perspective. You don't think it bogs it down too much, because I was going to say that's one of the strongest points is it adds more.
Right.
But it doesn't slow the game to a crawl. So score-wise, how about we start with Wendy?
Okay, I'm going to give this an 8.5. I do love Crusaders. I think it's an awesome game. I assume you give it probably like a 9?
Yeah, I think the base
game. I give the base game an 8.5, and I think the expansion goes right along with it. I think it's right at that same level of just being absolutely awesome. Yeah.
Fantastic. Roy?
Overall, this is not normally like my style of game, just how deterministic it is and things like that, but I really do enjoy the way it works. I'm giving it a 7.5. I enjoy how everything kind of comes together. It's fun to play. I would play it if people ask me to play it. I think it's fun.
Fantastic. I'm giving this a 9. It's just like with Wendy, same score as the base game. I think that if you haven't played the base game, then this is an odd review for you to have watched. Or if you're not familiar with it, I really recommend it. This expansion, I think, is particularly suited for people who have played this game a lot and want just a little bit more meat on the bones without adding to the time, without adding any slog. But I think it also has the benefit of probably not being too overwhelming for first-time players, depending on their level of comfort, because there's a lot. The only negative, in my opinion, is adding out those influence tokens onto every single spot of the setup of the board.
Oh, I forgot about that. The setup is so much more intensive because of that.
Right. One of the benefits of this game is that the setup's not too difficult. You say, hey, everyone, do what I'm doing. You put these discs on every spot where there's a disc. Put these little banners every spot there's a banner. And now you have to divvy out another task to everyone. It's not unbearable, but it is. Hey, put one of these tokens on every spot of the board.
You just have to add one more person to your game group, and done. Solved.
Right. So even though it's a lot of setup, the labor is divisible.
Right.
Pretty easily. So I like this expansion a lot. I've been looking forward to it coming out. I'm very happy that Renegade picked it up. Really recommend it. So that's a 9 out of 10 for me. So fantastic. Our thoughts on Crusaders Divine Influence. Thanks for coming by another Dice Tower review. My name is Chris Yi.
I'm Roy Cannaday.
And I'm Wendy Yi.
Stay purple. Very, very purple.